In the grim darkness that is the Warhammer 40k universe, there is but one light, one faction that seems to be above the rest when it comes to an actual utopia you might want to be a part of, and that is the Tau Empire. And as you can tell, Joytoy has done a magnificent job of capturing the essence that is this faction. They look absolutely incredible, guys, and we're going to go ahead and break it down today as to whether or not Joytoy really hit it out of the park, or is this just another good looking figure and that's it. Now, as you guys can tell, the Tau have been captured just absolutely incredible when it comes to the way that they look and the way that they pose. And in fact, this has to be Joytoy's absolute redemption when it comes to everything they've been doing so far. I am not going to lie to you guys, I've been about ready to quit this line and I wasn't sure if I was going to continue on. But when I saw the Tau and I saw that they seem to have fixed a lot of the same problems that we see with this Krieg figure right here, I thought to myself, I need to at least give this guys a try. So here we have them. As you can tell, they pose pretty nicely. They seem to look and aim down sight fairly well. They're sized correctly, I would say, as you can tell, compared to other counterparts. These are something that I think Joytoy has been trying to master for a while, and luckily the Tau being one of the figures that we haven't gotten in, or should I say that they didn't start off with, by the time they did get here, they were able to kind of focus on fixing a few of the problems. And as you can tell, these guys look incredible. They pose nicely. They look nice. I mean, this shot looks incredible for me at least. So this is something that we definitely got to pay attention to. So, all right, you guys, let's go ahead and move on to the actual review. All right, guys, so starting off with everything right here. So we have one of the first fire warriors. Okay, so this right here is going to be Shas La Dranmai. And so these figures look really nicely. So they come in if you saw my unboxing video, they come forward to a whole box. You know, so one of the things that I did complain about was the fact that you have to pay $100 for these to get all four instead of just $25 a piece to get one. But you know what? They're so good. I feel like they are worth purchasing. Now, as you can tell, for the most part, it's the exact same buck and it's the exact same body on all of them. Here we have Shas Ui Kran, and as you can tell, the only real difference that we're seeing with this one is a slightly different backpack, which we'll cover later. He also comes with a bladed weapon with a sheath on the backpack as well, so that's nice. And then we see a little bit of difference when it comes to the red pauldron, but it's the exact same base body. And of course, the guns differ, but we'll look into that a little bit later. So as you can tell right there, helmeted head is exactly the same. Pauldron is the same, it's just a different color. And then of course these guys come with the longer rifles. I apologize as I don't remember what's the difference between them, so I'm going to refer to one of them as the carbine and the other one as the long rifle. Okay, so this is one of the two figures that comes with the long rifle, and as you can tell, really good looking. They stand well, they're nice and boxy. They definitely look like the Tau warriors on the tabletop. Now this guy right here is Shasla Nor Taras, and for this guy right here, I added a extra cape. It's just basically a custom cape. There's no specific reason for it. As you can tell, he has an unhelmeted head, which is really cool. So you can kind of look at him as a more unique character than the other guys. So because of that, I decided, you know what, let me just throw a little cape on him. And I don't know, it looks really cool to me. I wouldn't be against putting one of these on all my figures. So I think that it's a good look overall. And as mentioned before, I really appreciate what Joytoy has done here and what they've been able to capture in terms of the figure itself. Now, Commander Shadowsun is an absolutely massive figure. Just compared to a lot of the Joytoy stuff that we've gotten before, the box itself is also really huge, so I had to back it up as far as I could. But I love this. I love the fact that Commander Shadowsun is not a small character. In fact, she makes the Space Marines look small, so that's something that, again, I appreciate overall. And as you can tell, they did a wonderful job of capturing the essence that is these battle suits, right? These mecha suits. It's why you get into Tau to begin with. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the design a little bit closer of the Tau figure. So as you can tell, identical bodies literally all the way to the bottom. The only difference is the helmet to the head. to the headless, should I say, the helmetless figure, and then of course the body colorings of the guy that comes with the sword. I do believe that the guy that comes with the, well, let's just call it a blade. With the blade is probably the fire team leader, right? So just again, this is just a really cool looking setup of figures. I like the design. I like the whites. I like the, the discoloration here and there. They're a fairly clean look. And yes, they have a little bit of muddiness to them, but I do appreciate that. I do like the fact that they look very futuristic. They look very, could I say, Japanese style, right? Like anime style. Like these guys are definitely known as the, the anime manga warriors from Warhammer 40k, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that when you look at the design, when you look at what they've done here, what they've been able to capture, it's really nice. And to be honest, what we've seen here is a future where these guys have the white armor. We also know that there's the other conclaves, which will have the all red armor, and then the original yellow color. So, if they end up coming out with future releases of these guys, basically just repainted in the other colors, which is perfectly fine. They can totally do that. The price point of these guys is bound to go even lower. So if you were already looking at these guys and, $25 a piece still was maybe not cheap enough, once they retool these and reuse these and just repaint them, because they look exactly like their yellow counterparts or their red counterparts, that the pricing for this stuff is going to drop potentially below $20 a piece. And if they come out as single pieces instead of a 4-piece, like this is going to be a huge seller for Joytoy. I think that they finally got it together with the design elements and how things move around. That, this is definitely one of those that you want to take a look at. Scale as well. We'll take a look at that later, but even the scale as well, let me tell you guys right now, has been handled very nicely. And you should definitely consider that if you were going to get out of Joytoy, look at this. Look at the way that this looks and how it stands. These guys look very, very nice together, very imposing. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few of the accessory differences. We'll take a look at the guns in a moment. But as you can tell here, the backpacks, this is the only real difference, as you can tell. The only real difference right here is that they look basically the same. The only difference is that the guy on the right has the sheath, and then he has what looks like some kind of like comm link on it as well. If you guys know exactly what that's for, let me know, because I'm not quite sure what it's for, but it does look really nice overall. Now, let's go ahead and transition into the actual weaponry. So there's multiple guns, of course, but they're basically repeated over. So we're just going to go over each one of them individually here. Not each one of them, but just each one of the individual ones here. So let's start off with the long rifle. So the long rifle looks really nice. As you can tell, it's a very, very squared off look. That's again what the tower known for, right? This very cybernetic, advanced style weaponry, right? They're not really supposed to look archaic like some of the bolter rifles. They are supposed to embody like a newer style. So that one looks really nice. And then as you could tell, these look exactly the same from the stock up until about the midsection, and then basically the length changes. And then as you can tell here, the sight for this one is flush on top, right? It's right there, right flush. While on the long rifle, it kind of stands up a little bit. So that's also a slight difference. I really like that, right? One might be for long distance. The other one might be for close combat. Speaking of close combat, here's the knife. So it's the only knife we get, but I really like the blockiness, man. Like this looks really cool, and it looks really good in their hands. It looks perfect. It is a fairly large knife. It is a very thick blade, but I like how they handled that, okay? Now, I do need a little help with this, guys. If you guys are into the Tau faction and know a little bit more about this, what is this? I thought it was a grenade at first, but then I'm seeing the antenna, so I imagine it's more of like a comm piece. Of course, I could be wrong, but yeah, if you know, let me know. I'd like to know. And then for this one right here, is this supposed to be a grenade, or is this supposed to be another like magazine piece? Because I think it is really cool. I think it looks really nice. It looks like it could be a magazine to put into the, like a battery. And we do get an extra one right here on the belt, which by the way looks very nice. So I'm just kind of curious, is it a grenade or is it an ammo pouch? Like what is it? For those of you who know, let me know in the comment section below. But I really like everything that these guys come with. They come very well equipped. Okay, now let's go ahead and transition over into articulation. So time to see if these guys are up to snuff. If you guys know, I've spoken about it, the Krieg soldiers were a big letdown. So I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case here. So you can aim the head up about that far. It's not too far, to be honest, but it's enough that it does make them look like fairly upwards. And then if you try to adjust it downwards, as you can tell, I was able to get a little bit out of there. So you can make it look like they're looking more downward. So there is definitely some articulation here, and it's definitely more free than the Krieg soldiers. And then when it comes to the spine, or should I say the back, there is a little bit, though this is less than I thought that they would have had. But considering the size of the figure and all the armor, I understand that they would be a little bit hindered. Left to right doesn't seem to be a problem, and you can do a full 360. I just don't want to ruin the paint. And then if you look towards the bottom of the waist, it also turns left and right. Same thing. It could probably do a full, 360. Not going to ruin the paint. And then we're going to go ahead and go for the T-pose. So this is something that I think somebody mentioned. As you can tell, I was able to get the arm a bit higher, and that doesn't hurt the paint at all. So you can get a very far T-pose. Now, this isn't a full T, of course, and as you can tell, there's a little bit of an indent in there, which allows that extra little bit of articulation. I'm very happy with how these guys came out. Sure, it doesn't go past 90, and it doesn't even get to 90, but it goes far enough. And then when it comes to the elbow, same thing. I would say that this is pretty good, 90 degrees. And of course it swings all the way around, but because of the way the elbow is at the bottom, as you swing it backwards like that, it starts to go downward. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay. You're never going to put the arm backwards like that anyway. And then the ball joint on the hand allows you to get basically all the grip you want, right? The pistol grip, the push-up grip, it's not enough for either one, right? Compared to some of the other figures we've gotten before, but I would say that it's good enough. And then the arms can be brought up, but as you can tell on the other side, the shoulder piece kind of stops it. And then if we go down into the leg section, we can go ahead and see how far we get. So let's start off with the double joints at the legs. So as you can tell, beautiful. That goes about as far as you will ever need it. So that's awesome. I definitely like the fact that we got our money's worth for that dual joint there instead of, it not coming up to 90. And then on top of that, you do get that nice knee piece right down the center as it should be. Now I'm trying to bring the leg up, and as you can tell here, you can't bring it up to 90 basically straight forward. Okay, let's go down into the leg. As you can tell, the leg, or should I say the hoof at the bottom moves, but I don't know if you guys can see that. It kind of goes at an angle and it's hard to move. So I'm not really quite sure if, if I take off the hoof, I can maybe align the feet better, but as far as I can tell right now, they're not aligned great, which makes it hard to stand these guys a little bit, but for the most part, it's good. And then as you can tell, the splits, I think this is fair. You can't do the full splits, but for the armor and the fact that these guys aren't supposed to be doing the splits, I think that you can get fairly decent. And then of course, now let's go back into the upper thigh. So that's as far as the leg goes, as I mentioned before. But, if you bring down the knee, I guess the thigh pad a little more, you get a little bit more out of it. But if you want to bring the leg all the way up, you're going to have to go to the side to bring the leg up. So what's cool about this is that if you want him kicking somebody in front of him, you can bring the leg all the way up to 90 degrees. But as you can tell, because of that, when you bend him, it's going to come up to the side like that. Now, at least it's not so bad that it's literally horizontal. It is coming kind of like a diagonal look, so you can get a fairly good pose out of that, but just know that is a bit of a limitation unless of course you decide to just remove the thigh pads altogether, which I wouldn't do. So for the most part, I think the articulation here is pretty awesome. Okay, now switching over to Commander Shadowsun. So let's go ahead and take a look. So as you guys can tell, what an impeccable figure this is. I'm not going to say that it's perfect, but the design is great. I think Warhammer really knocked it out of the park when they designed this guy to begin with, and I think Joytoy covered and captured exactly what this guy is supposed to, well, it's a chick, what this chick is supposed to look like, and she looks amazing. I love the hair. I love the fact that it's in this kind of dynamic pose, like there's wind blowing, or if you have her flying through the air, what it would look like. So I think this is a great design overall, and I'm happy that we got a lot of what you see here, the blacks, the yellows, the line work. This matches very nicely with the rest of the line. Granted, she is, white with yellow, while all the other characters are white with red. So that's just one little difference. But I think they really did a good job with the overall design of what we're getting here, while still making it surprisingly functional overall. So that's something that we're going to talk about in the articulation section. Now, she is definitely top heavy, and you need to deal with some of that weight management to get her to stand. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to have her connected to her stand probably full time, to make it a bit easier for her to just stand upright, or else it's going to make everything else weak. But as you can tell, she's got the hooved feet as well. That's awesome. They could have given her any kind of design, but they went with that. The pistons in the legs and the knees, and then the, what do you call, like that sash coming out of her pistol grip. I think that that is a really good look overall. They did a masterful job with the guns. I mean, this is a very impressive looking figure in person. Now, obviously, Commander Shadowsun comes with a lot already on her. So when it comes down to the accessories, she comes with this pistol, as you can see right here. It is a fairly large pistol because she does have big hands. So you can't really put them into the regular Tau hands, but they look great. And then the helmet that she comes with is really hard to take off. You're going to have to dip this into some hot water in order to get it off. And you're going to have to dip her head into hot water in order to put it on. But I really like the asymmetrical look of the eyes. It really makes it look futuristic, right? Rather than having two eyeballs or two retinal scans or whatever you want to call those things, they're not. And then the top of the head looks like a literal hoof. So I don't know if that was on purpose, but kudos to keeping that like hoof theme going throughout the figures. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into articulation. Guys, I did my best to try to cover this. This is a really tough figure to cover articulation in, so I tried my best to kind of show you guys, you know, how it works, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at it right here. So when it comes to the head sculpt, not a lot. The peg itself, very short. So, you know, you can only go a little bit forward, a little bit back, enough to kind of make her look down at an opponent, but not really enough to make her look up like if she's in a flight pose. Yes, you get a little bit to the side. So again, you can get a little bit of personality, but most of the personality of her is going to come from the mech suit itself. So when it comes to the top of the figure, you actually can't do a full 180. It looks like you can only go about to the side before it hits, and I'm definitely not going to break it to try to get through that. So you can get enough to go to the side and side, enough to make it look like she's obviously turning to the side, but you cannot do a full 180. And then of course you do get, or should I say 360, then you get a shimmy right there, which is nice. Again, you can have her kind of, you know, crouching forward. It's a little bit, I would say, weak in the middle for mine, so that kind of sucks. But as you can tell, even though you can't bring her head far enough back, you can bring the lower half of the body, you know, from basically from that upper waist down, far enough back to make her look like she's flying through the air and looking forward. So that's very nice. Now let's go ahead and take a peek into these shoulders real quick. So as you can tell, the shoulder pieces are basically butterfly that also come out. So as you can tell, I'm going to try to shimmy it there. So as you can tell, they do come forward. Does that add any real articulation? You know what? I think it adds enough to give clearance to the arms and the back, because as you can tell, they're close enough that they're hitting. So that is something you got to keep aware of. And then of course the articulation in the shoulder piece itself allows it to go up and down as well. So keep that in mind. Now I'm going to try to put her in a T-pose real quick. I got to move basically the cannons out of the way because they're close enough. But as you can tell, as you come up into the T-pose, it looks super badass. Those shoulder pads, the way they come up like that, she just looks like if she were launching up in the air right now, right, with those shoulders like that, that looks so dope. And as you can tell, the Y pose here, or should I say the T-pose here, does come up pretty far. This is pretty solid. I think that this definitely comes up higher than what you get in the Tau figures, and considering the bulkiness of this, that's pretty good. Now, of course, moving down into the elbow section, this is a robot, or should I say a mechanized body. So it goes full 360, no problem right there at the elbow. It's also a single joint, which, you know, that's fine with me for the kind of robot that it's supposed to be. This is really what it should look like. You get roughly 90 degrees. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's like 89 degrees, I don't know, or 91 degrees, I don't know my geometry all that well. And then it obviously goes circular as well. So that's nice. You get a good amount of articulation in there. And then that hand, while it looks like it might be a little bit, subdued because of everything around it, it does move around fairly well. It does have fairly big ball joints in there that allow for a fair amount of articulation. The other side of the arm is exactly the same. And then moving over to the back, can anyone explain to me what this is and why it articulates? I have no problem with the fact that it articulates. Is it supposed to be like up like that when she's flying? Is it supposed to be down when, don't quite understand that. And then I saw a few complaints about this on the Facebook page, but be mindful that shoulder piece up there is not as well placed onto that back shoulder as the front shoulder plates are. So just be mindful when you're trying to maneuver this. This is on ratchet joints. I'm sure you guys can see that, the way it just kind of clicked into place. You can go basically up to 90 degrees. I would say about 90 degrees. So the back arms do a good T-pose. And then same kind of arm joint, elbow joint, can go basically to 90 degrees and then spins all the way around. But just be mindful again, as it's very tight. All of it is very tight. So make sure you're putting pressure on the right pieces, right? If you got to take it off first maybe and then, adjust it like this and then put it back on, do what you have to do, as I'm not saying that these are prone to breaking, but my figure came very, very tight in a lot of these ratcheted joint places. So don't break the pegs, because these will probably last you a fair amount of time because it's ratcheted. So that is nice. And then as you can tell, you can do a full, 360 with those arms. As I mentioned, they just kind of, it's a big bulky ass cannon on both sides, which, by the way, the design looks great. These things look imposing, and it just kind of makes the pistol look kind of funny, because why the hell does she have a pistol when she has these fat ass cannons literally on her back? But yeah, as you can tell, basically up to 90 degrees on both sides. So it's a good look. Now let's go ahead and transition into the bottom half of the body. So let's see how far she can get with her legs. So she does have a double knee, but the double knee really only serves to get her about 90 degrees. I don't know. I kind of feel like you should be able to get way past 90 degrees. That back of the leg should be able to point up more. If I'm doing it wrong, somebody let me know if maybe I missed something, but you can only get to about 90 degrees, which is fine for a robot. I'll let it slide. You can still get her into a lot of poses. As you can tell in that upper hip, it can go forward and back like that. It can go up and down into the splits position. So you can get a lot out of it. I just kind of wish that knee went up a little further. When it comes to kicking forward though, God damn, can you guys see this? Okay, look, so she can literally kick up into the sky. There could be a Primarch demon right in front of her, and she's kicking it in the jaw, standing straight. So, of course, you won't be able to stand her up because of the weight, right? She'll just fall back. But, with her stand, you can have her kicking a foe right in front of her, and she's basically kicking to the sky. So when it comes to posability in the legs, I think it's great. As you can see right there, the splits goes really, really far. And then you just have to kind of push the hips in a little bit, because I don't know, it doesn't seem to sit as flush as I would like it to, but it's still pretty good. So when it comes to articulation, for what this is, I think this is really solid. They really knocked it out of the park with the design and things like that. All right. Now, I do want to switch over into something that's obviously very, very important. If you had any concerns about these figures when it comes to playability, especially if you bought the Krieg like I did and you feel kind of burned by it, I think I'd be willing to say that these guys don't have that problem. So we're going to go into playability right now. These guys are soldiers. So what are the things that we want to see them be able to do? Can they aim down sight? So you can tell here, he can hold his weapon with both hands, no problem. You can adjust the head a little bit forward, and then boom, nice and flush. This is a very flush aim down sight. For what these are and how big the heads are and a lot of the proportions of them, which are, I think, pretty accurate, it's not a problem. Aim down pose is not a problem. Now, when it comes to putting him into a kneeling aim down sight pose, can he do it? So yes. Now, of course, that doesn't look super flush because, again, the legs don't come up to 90 naturally. You can kind of get it as far as you can, and you give it a little bend. Not a problem. You can drop the front of the gun a little bit to make him look like he's not aiming upwards. Instead, he's aiming more forwards. So you get a good amount. Now, the trick is twist the leg, bring it up to 90, and then twist it back as far as you can. Now, that is perfect. That is a perfect aim down sight in a kneeling pose. Is it off to the side a little bit? Yes, but you basically have the foot flush on the ground. So this looks really nice. So when it comes to playability, not a problem. And I know in the intro, I showed you guys that you can get them into a prone position. You can get them into a prone position, and depending on how you want to play with it, you can kind of finesse what you're trying to do out of it. The Joytoy figures are perfect when it comes to like Marines and stuff. Perfectly can be in a prone position aiming down sight. These guys, on the other hand, because of how thick the gun is and the helmet is and just kind of the way everything is proportioned, you kind of have to play with it a little bit. So in this case, I kind of try to drop the hand under the gun so that it can kind of even it out a little more so it looks like he's pointing straight forward. That's about as good as I was able to get it at a moment's notice. So can you put him into a prone position? I think so. I think that this does pass that. And as you can tell, these guys they look really nice. So when it comes to posability and just the way that they look in their design, I think that Joytoy absolutely knocked it out of the park, you know, with what they had to work with. And I imagine some of the limitations that they had. Now, before I move on to the other guy, because he comes with a sword, I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at this guy. So as I mentioned before, the cape is just something I got off of eBay a long time ago, and every now and then I throw it on a figure, but I think I found its forever home, as I'm going to probably buy a few of those for all of the other Tau figures that I have. And then going back to the main, I shouldn't say the main guy, but the fire team leader. And just so you know, that sword is not easy to pull out, and it's not easy to put in. You're going to have to heat up the sheath. So this is obviously a bladed weapon. So we always want to know, can our bladed figure do what we want him to do? And yes, of course, it's a ball joint at the end. So can you have him pointing forward? Yes, you can. That's absolutely amazing. Can you have him kind of aiming upwards, 360, everything you want out of this guy? He can absolutely do it. And then when it comes to the other part of it is, if you have figures that can hold blades, would they be able to hold it with both hands? Obviously, this is not the best. It's a one-handed blade, but if I were to go get a bigger sword, can they hold that sword together? Yes, they can. Yes, you can get them. Their hands do come close enough. And thanks to the dumbbell joints, you can get enough out of it that you could be having him with a bladed weapon fighting against somebody else. Now, I've been told that the Tau can't fight close-handed for shit. Probably not true. Probably they're pretty good, but just in comparison to the legendary warriors that are out there, probably not so much. But these guys look really nice. And again, this is a really nice bladed weapon. I really like the shoulder piece. And then, of course, can you aim this guy's hand upwards? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. So ultimately, guys, when it comes to the playability, I know that this might not be as high as some of the other Joytoy figures that we've gotten before, but for Joytoy, for Warhammer 40k specifically, I think they finally got it. They finally got something that's acceptable, that looks nice, that has just the right look overall, and I couldn't be more happy to tell you guys, get these figures. Okay, so now, of course, what would this review be without a couple of size comparisons? So I brought out a lot for you guys. I'm hoping that you guys take a look at all of them. Let me know which ones look the best and which ones you think might be just might be really usable, even if they're not from Warhammer or Joytoy. So let's start off with this first one right here. So this is going to be the Krieg Soldier. So when it comes down to it, humans are supposed to be the slightest bit taller than the Tau, and I would say that that is the case here. This is obviously a helmeted character on the left. And this is the Krieg Soldier without his helmet, but the helmet sits fairly flush, but you can tell here that he's just the slightest bit taller. And if I bring in this guy right here without the helmet, who is a bit shorter, without, the helmet on his head for you to see, as you can tell, he's absolutely the slightest bit shorter than the Krieg Soldier. Joytoy, thank you. Thank you. That is 100% to scale for me. All right, you guys. So now let's go ahead and switch it over to Acid Rain. This is one of the owls. So as you can tell, Acid Rain usually does run a little bit larger. Well, I would say larger than the regular Joytoy stuff, but not larger than the Warhammer stuff. But as you can tell, this guy's one of the smaller bugs. So he's kind of in line with the Tau figures. Obviously, Commander Shadowsun dwarfs all these guys. And then we have another one of these figures from Acid Rain. I apologize, I don't know why I don't remember their names. But regardless, as you can tell, this guy is on the slightly bigger buck. And as you can tell, even in the slightly bigger buck, he is only about as tall as the Tau character, which just kind of goes to show you how tall the Krieg Soldier is. overall, but I would say that, yeah, these still look very nice. As you saw in the opening montage, you guys can have them fighting each other, and they look great, right? Samurai versus samurai, awesome. Now, the big discrepancy, guys. So this was the very first Primaris Space Marine set that we got from Joytoy, and they were undersized. At this point, you guys know that there is a 2.0 set, and the 2.0 set is the slightest bit taller. They are kind of rectifying some of those problems. And as you can tell, this Tau soldier is absolutely massive compared to this to this character right here. I am going to tell you guys right now that yes, the Space Marines are undersized. I don't care what anyone says. I don't think anyone can really dispute that they should be bigger. Whether or not this is big enough for you, that's different, right? You might be satisfied. That's perfectly fine. Buy these. But these guys are definitely too small. And while we do have a 2.0 figure that's made them a little bit bigger, I do believe we're going to get a 3.0 soon. That'll be even larger. So we'll have to see about that. But again, this is just a size comparison. Now, also on my unboxing video, you saw I did get that Aquaman figure. Not a bad figure, actually. I really like it. Probably going to end up returning it if I'm being 100% honest, but it's not a bad looking figure. I do appreciate what they were able to do with this guy. And as you can tell, this McFarlane does run kind of big for 1/6 scale, or excuse me, 1/12 scale, and obviously he dwarfs both of them. So Commander Shadowsun looks big until you have him next to an actual 1/12 size figure, and then you're like, he's really not that big. But he, I would say, is more, or should I say, she would be more on the size of a Star Wars figure. And yeah, this next guy right here, I think this is the 5th brother that's about to come up right now. He is definitely more in line with the height and size. As you can tell, yeah, I would say that he's not even all that tall for a Star Wars figure. He's more or less mid. And as you can tell, Commander Shadowsun is about that size. So could you really use this for Star Wars? You might be able to finesse it. Definitely not the small ones, but maybe Commander Shadowsun. So I guess keep that in mind. And then, of course, sticking in with the fact that it's Hasbro, here we have Stalker from the G.I. Joe line. As you can tell, definitely taller, but he looks great. I need to do a review on him, but as you can tell, for the 1/12 stuff, you know, not even Commander Shadowsun really touches that, so it's still within its own league in terms of scaling, and that's fine. I perfectly don't have a problem with that at all, as it should be. And then, of course, here we have, this is Doeg. I always forget this guy's name when I bring him up. As you can tell, he's actually one of the bigger Acid Rain figures that we've gotten. And as you can tell, he's definitely a bit taller than that Tau soldier, a bit more in line with the Krieg soldier. And that's without a helmet on. So just so you know, this guy is a big boy in comparison to the regular sized figures. And then switching over to a different brand, this is Figma. We have Zenitsu, the Lightning God. That's not what they call him. I just call him that because he's a badass. But as you can tell, he is actually perfectly sized for Commander Shadowsun. Figma does run small, so consider that some of their sci-fi stuff, like the Ghost in the Shell stuff, might actually fit perfectly for you to have them fighting each other. Obviously, you can do whatever you want with your diorama, but when it comes to Figma, Figma is definitely a bit closer to this. So I do appreciate that size difference. And then switching back over to Joytoy's own stuff. So this is one of the PLA figures. And I don't know why, but in this shot, the PLA figures look really small. I didn't realize how small they look. As you can tell, if this is how a 6-foot figure looks compared to the Tau, slightly smaller, then that Krieg soldier absolutely towers this guy. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about how you want to put these guys all together. They're smaller. Their regular Joytoy stuff runs smaller. And then, of course, here we have Tau Pai Pai. This is SH Figure Arts. He's a smaller figure, I would say, from the SHF line of Dragon Ball Z stuff. So I would say that most of the stuff here is going to be bigger. So that's, you know, that's perfectly fine. And then, of course, switching over to the No Guns Life. Now, this is a tall figure. Honestly, he's not that tall, but he's tall enough. And as you can tell, you know, this is wildly out of scale. This isn't going to work no matter what, but it is a good looking figure overall. And then, of course, we're going to switch over to the last one. Here we have Captain Connor. I don't remember this dude's name. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Is it Connor? No. I forget. Anyways, this is one of the Halo figures. I do believe he's a Spartan 3, so he is supposed to be a little bit smaller than the regular one. So if I were to get like George is even taller than this guy. But regardless, it doesn't matter. Sci-fi to sci-fi, these guys aren't big enough. I might buy some future Halo ODSTs if they get them, so we'll have to see how those size up to these guys in the future. And then actually I decided to put in one more figure, Buzz Lightyear. And as you can tell, Buzz Lightyear is not a big character, but even he's slightly taller than Commander Shadowsun. So just keep that in mind. He looks absolutely goofy. Could you imagine this dude being in the Warhammer universe? He lasts about 5 minutes before the Tyranids absolutely tore him apart. So this is kind of hilarious to see. But anyways, this is this is a good comparison overall of everything that I have in my repertoire. Alright, Tribe Mob, so there you guys have it. Joytoy's redemption is in full force right now. The Tau Empire, the Tau figures, the Fire Warrior, the Commander Shadowsun are incredible figures that I think anybody that purchases them is going to enjoy them. I've also had a lot of people on the Facebook page and just in general tell me that these are pretty good figures, and now that I've had a chance to put my hands on them, put them through all the review and take a look at them, these are without a doubt the best Joytoy figures that have come out so far. They have good articulation, they have good posing, they have, you know, a solid price point. The quality of them seems to be fairly nice overall. I think that these are exactly what everybody expected from their initial releases, and while it has taken them a few months, really almost a year really, to get to this point, I think that these are going to be the figures that anyone can purchase, anyone can get into. They're not undersized like the Space Marines. They're not basically cones like the Krieg. They're scaled, I would say, properly. So mostly positives here. There are a few things that could be different, but I think that for what they are and for their price point, they articulate nicely. They come with multiple features. You know, the sword, the grenades, some of the other attachments. So for me, I'm willing to say this is a must-buy set. If you buy nothing else from Joytoy and their Warhammer series, I would suggest pick up at least a squad of these guys. And as I mentioned, as we get other colors of these guys and potential single releases, these will become even cheaper. So keep an eye out. I think that anybody that buys these is going to walk away fairly impressed by what Joytoy was able to do here. But like I said, like I always say, please like, please comment, please subscribe. Please let me know what it is that you guys like the most about this video. I tried a few new things, so I'm hoping you guys can give me some feedback on what I could do to make these videos better. But again, let me know what you guys like about this and what you guys are looking forward to in terms of future releases in the future.